For 1 year, I sent money to my son every month for the treatment of my sick grandson who lived in Canada. He always showed me documents and hospital photos. Yesterday, I decided to visit them unannounced. When I arrived, I saw my grandson healthy and running in the garden. But what came next was even worse. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning in September, crisp and official looking, with a Canadian postmark that made my heart clench before I even opened it. Inside was a hospital invoice, another one, this time for something called immunotherapy consultation at Toronto General Hospital. The amount made my hands shake. $12,000. I stood in my kitchen in rural Pennsylvania, surrounded by the morning light filtering through lace curtains my mother had hung 50 years ago, and felt the weight of every one of my 63 years settle into my bones. For 12 months now, I'd been sending money to my son Samuel in Toronto, every month, sometimes twice a month, for my grandson Timothy's leukemia treatment. My sweet Timothy, 7 years old, with his father's dark hair and my late husband's gentle eyes. The thought of him suffering through chemotherapy, losing his hair, feeling sick and scared, it had consumed me for a year. I'd sold my late husband's vintage car collection. I'd taken out a second mortgage on this farmhouse. I'd depleted my retirement savings to almost nothing. But I'd do it again. I'd do anything for that child. I set the invoice on the kitchen table next to the others I kept in a worn manila folder. Documentation, Samuel always said, for insurance purposes later. My son had always been meticulous about paperwork. It was one of the things that had made him successful in his accounting career, before he'd moved to Canada with his wife, Nicole, chasing some opportunity in her family's business. I'd never quite warmed to Nicole. There was something calculated in her smile, something watchful in her eyes when she thought no one was looking. But Samuel loved her, and she'd given me Timothy, so I'd pushed my reservations aside. What did I know anyway? I was just an old farm woman who'd never been farther than Pittsburgh. The phone rang, jarring me from my thoughts. I picked it up, expecting it to be my daughter Clara from her real estate office in town. "Mom?" It was Samuel's voice, but something was wrong. He sounded hollow, distant. "Sweetheart, I just got the new invoice. Don't worry. I can— Mom, I need another $5,000. His words came out in a rush. "The treatment. There's been a complication. Timothy needs additional medication. They want payment up front." My chest tightened. "Samuel, honey, I just sent $8,000 last week. Are you sure?" "Mom, please." Now his voice cracked, and I heard something I'd never heard from my son before. Desperation edged with something else. Fear? "Nicole says we need it by Friday. The doctors won't continue treatment without it." Something flickered in the back of my mind. A wrong note in a familiar song. Samuel had always been proud, almost to a fault. Even in college, when he'd struggled financially, he'd worked 3 jobs rather than ask for help. Now he called every few weeks with his hand out, and each time he sounded less like my son and more like a stranger reading from a script. "Let me talk to Timothy," I said suddenly. Silence stretched across the line. "He's sleeping, Mom. The treatments make him so tired." "Then wake him, just for a minute. I need to hear his voice." "Mom, I can't. The doctors say he needs his rest. Look, can you send the money or not?" His tone had shifted, become almost sharp. That wasn't like him either. I closed my eyes. "Of course, sweetheart. I'll wire it tomorrow." After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, staring at the folder of hospital invoices and photos Samuel had sent over the months. Timothy with an IV in his arm. Timothy in a hospital bed, looking pale and thin. Timothy with a surgical mask covering half his face. But something nagged at me. I pulled out my reading glasses and examined the photos more carefully. In one picture, supposedly taken in February, I could see through the hospital window behind Timothy's bed. The trees outside were in full bloom. In Pennsylvania, we'd had 3 feet of snow in February. But Toronto was farther north. Wouldn't it be even colder there? I opened my laptop. Clara had bought it for me 2 years ago and taught me the basics, and searched for Toronto weather in February. According to every source I found, Toronto had been buried in ice and snow well into March. My pulse quickened. I pulled out another photo, this one from May. Timothy sat in a wheelchair in what was labeled as the hospital hallway, but behind him, through another window, I could see a street sign partially visible. I squinted at it, then increased the contrast on my laptop screen using a trick Clara had shown me. The sign was in Spanish. Toronto was in Canada. They spoke English and French there, not Spanish. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. I almost called Samuel back, almost demanded answers. But something stopped me. If I was wrong, if I was just a paranoid old woman seeing conspiracies where there were none, I'd destroy what little trust remained between us. Samuel already thought I was becoming forgetful, too dependent on routine. Last Christmas, he'd suggested I might want to consider assisted living options. No, I needed to be sure first. I spent the next 3 hours on the internet, learning things I'd never imagined. I discovered how to reverse search images, how to check the metadata of photographs, how to verify medical facilities. The photos Samuel had sent, or rather, that I'd assumed Samuel had sent, began to unravel under scrutiny. The hospital room in the March photo? It matched a stock image from a medical supply website. The doctor supposedly treating Timothy? His face appeared in a promotional brochure for a clinic in Mexico City. The invoice letterhead from Toronto General Hospital? The logo was wrong, using a font that had been changed 3 years ago. I sat back in my chair, my heart hammering. Someone was lying. But who? And why? The rational explanation was that Nicole was behind this. Samuel had said she handled most of the communications because he was too emotional about Timothy's illness to deal with the paperwork. But that would mean Samuel knew that he was complicit in defrauding his own mother. Unless he didn't know. The thought struck me like lightning. What if Samuel was being deceived too? What if Nicole had somehow been sending these messages, these photos, these invoices without his knowledge? It seemed impossible. Yet, I remembered how strange Samuel had sounded on the phone. How scripted. How he'd become sharp when I'd asked to speak to Timothy. What if that hadn't been Samuel at all? I looked at my phone, at the number the call had come from. It was Samuel's number, the same one I'd been calling for years. But in this age of technology, couldn't numbers be manipulated? Couldn't voices be disguised? My daughter Clara's warnings echoed in my mind. Mom, you need to be careful online. There are people who prey on seniors, who create elaborate schemes. But this wasn't some stranger from the internet. This was my son, my grandson, my family. Or was it? I made a decision then, sitting in my quiet kitchen with the afternoon sun slanting through the windows. I would go to Toronto. I would see Timothy with my own eyes, hold him, speak to Samuel face to face. I wouldn't tell them I was coming. The element of surprise might be the only advantage I had. I picked up the phone and called the airline, booking a flight for the next day. My hands shook as I gave my credit card information. This was insane. I was a 63-year-old woman who'd barely traveled beyond state lines. But I'd spent over $200,000 this year on medical treatments that might not be real. I'd mortgaged my home, my future, my security. I deserved answers. That evening, I packed a small suitcase, trying to keep my hands steady. I left a note for my neighbor to feed my cats. I called Clara and told her I was visiting Samuel. She was surprised, but pleased, not knowing the true reason for my sudden trip. As I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, I thought about all the signs I'd ignored. The way Nicole always answered when I called, saying Samuel was at work or Timothy was sleeping. The way the medical updates had become increasingly vague. The way the requests for money had grown more frequent and more urgent. And I thought about the locked drawer in Samuel's old bedroom upstairs, the one he'd left behind when he moved. I'd never opened it, respecting his privacy even after he'd been gone for 8 years. But tonight, I got up, went to his room, and with a hairpin and determination I didn't know I possessed, I worked the lock until it clicked open. Inside were documents, old ones from before he'd moved to Canada, bank statements showing a comfortable savings account, insurance papers, and at the bottom, a letter from Nicole to someone named Marcus, dated just before their marriage. The content made my blood run cold. Once we're married and move to Canada, we'll have access to his family's resources. The mother is wealthy from her husband's life insurance and farm assets. She's trusting, isolated, perfect. I read it 3 times, each word burning into my mind. This had been planned from the beginning. Nicole had targeted my son to get to me. But for what purpose? And did Samuel know? I couldn't sleep after that. At dawn, I drove to the airport, the letter tucked in my purse, my heart full of dread and determination. 12 hours later, my taxi pulled up to the address Samuel had given me years ago. A pleasant suburban home in North York, Toronto. The neighborhood was quiet, tree-lined, peaceful. And there, in the front garden, I saw him. Timothy, my grandson, running, laughing, chasing a soccer ball with the energy of a completely healthy 7-year-old boy. No wheelchair, no IV, no pallor of sickness. Just a happy, healthy child in the late afternoon sun. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, my suitcase in my hand, as my entire world shifted beneath my feet. Because if Timothy wasn't sick, then where had all my money gone? And what exactly had I been paying for this entire year? I watched Timothy for 10 minutes, maybe 15, hidden behind a neighbor's hedge like some kind of criminal. My grandson looked nothing like the photos Samuel had sent. He was robust, energetic, his cheeks flushed with health and exertion. His hair, thick and dark, bounced as he ran. No sign of chemotherapy, no evidence of illness, no shadow of the suffering I'd been told was consuming his young life. My hands gripped my suitcase handle so tightly my knuckles went white. About $237,000. That's what I'd sent over the past year. Money from my husband Frank's life insurance, from the sale of his prized possessions, from a mortgage that now hung over my head like a guillotine. All of it supposedly saving my grandson's life. All of it a lie. I needed to think strategically. Confronting them in anger would get me nowhere. I'd learned that much in 63 years of living. If Nicole was behind this, she'd have prepared explanations, excuses, ways to manipulate the situation. I needed to observe first, gather evidence, understand the full scope of what had been done to me. And I needed to know if Samuel was victim or accomplice. I walked up the driveway, pulling my suitcase behind me, forcing my face into a calm mask even as my heart threatened to burst from my chest. Timothy saw me first. "Grandma!" His shout was pure joy, unfiltered and real. He dropped the soccer ball and ran toward me, and despite everything, despite the betrayal and the lies, my arms opened automatically to catch him. He felt solid and warm and completely, wonderfully healthy. "Timothy, sweetheart," I managed, my voice barely steady. "Look at you. You're looking so much better." "Better?" He pulled back, confused. "I'm not sick, Grandma. I've never been sick." The words hit me like a physical blow. He didn't even know. They'd kept the lie from him, too. "Grandma!" Samuel's voice came from the front door. He stood there, frozen, his face cycling through emotions too quickly for me to read. Surprise, confusion, fear, something else I couldn't name. "What are you doing here? Why didn't you call?" "I wanted to surprise you." I kept my voice light, grandmother cheerful, even as I studied every micro-expression on my son's face. I thought, why not come see my boys in person? It's been too long. Samuel descended the porch steps slowly, like a man walking toward his execution. Up close, I could see he looked terrible, thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under his eyes and a nervous energy that reminded me of a trapped animal. "Mom, this isn't a good time. Nicole's not here and—" "Nicole's not here?" I interrupted, keeping my smile fixed. "Well, that's fine. I came to see you and Timothy. Where is she?" "Business trip. She left this morning." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized from his childhood when he was lying. "She'll be gone for a week." A week. The timing seemed too convenient. Had she somehow known I was coming? But how could she? "Samuel, honey, you look exhausted. Why don't you let me make dinner? We can catch up, just the 3 of us. Like old times." I saw him waver, saw the little boy who'd once needed his mother's comfort, fighting with the man who was hiding something terrible. The boy won, barely. Okay, yeah, that would be good. Inside, the house was immaculate, almost showroom perfect, too perfect. There were no medical supplies, no medications, no evidence whatsoever of a sick child living here. The photos on the walls showed Timothy at various ages, all healthy, all smiling. Nothing like the gaunt, pale child in the images I'd been sent. I moved through the house while Samuel settled Timothy in the living room with a video game, my eyes cataloging everything. In the kitchen, I opened cabinets under the pretense of finding cooking supplies. Normal food, normal dishes. Nothing special for a child supposedly undergoing intensive medical treatment. Mom, what are you looking for? Samuel stood in the doorway, watching me with those haunted eyes. Just getting my bearings, I said lightly. You know me. I like to know where everything is. Samuel, where do you keep Timothy's medications? I want to make sure I understand his treatment schedule while I'm here. The color drained from his face. His medications? For the leukemia, honey. I want to help while I'm visiting. Make sure he takes everything on time. I watched him carefully. Watched the truth trying to surface through layers of deception or confusion. I still couldn't tell which. Mom, He stopped. Started again. Can we talk? Privately? We stepped into a small office off the kitchen. Samuel closed the door and leaned against it, his hands shaking. I don't know how to say this, he began. And for a moment, hope flared in me. Maybe he would confess. Maybe he would tell me the truth. Maybe my son was innocent in all this. Samuel, sweetheart, just tell me. Whatever it is, you can't be here. The words came out in a rush. You need to leave. Tonight. I'll pay for your hotel. I'll drive you there myself. But you can't stay in this house. Why not? I'm your mother. I've sent you over $200,000 this year for Timothy's treatment, and I think I deserve— Please don't. His voice cracked. Please don't talk about the money. Not here, not now. Samuel, what is going on? Timothy is running around outside like a perfectly healthy child. Where are his medications? Where is any evidence of leukemia treatment? Where did my money go? He slid down the door until he was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. For a moment, I thought he might cry. Instead, he looked up at me with eyes that held more fear than I'd ever seen. I don't know, he whispered. Mom, I swear, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You've been calling me, sending me invoices, photos. I haven't called you in 6 months. His voice was hollow. Nicole said you wanted it that way, that it was too painful for you to talk to me directly, that you'd rather just send the money and receive updates through email. The room tilted. Samuel, I've received calls from your phone number every week. That's impossible. I don't— He pulled out his phone, fumbling with it. I'll show you my call log. I haven't called you. Nicole said you were dealing with so much stress that we needed to keep communication minimal. He handed me his phone. I scrolled through the call history. He was right. No outgoing calls to my number, but I'd received calls. I'd talked to someone I believed was my son. Show me the text messages, I said quietly. The ones about Timothy's treatment. What text messages? Samuel, for the past year, I've received texts from your number, updates about Timothy, requests for money, photos of him in the hospital. His hand shook as he opened his messaging app and searched for my number. The conversation history was there, but it was minimal. Just a few messages from over 6 months ago, and nothing like what I'd been receiving. She cloned my phone, he said, his voice barely audible. Nicole cloned my phone. She's been pretending to be me. Why? For what purpose? What is she involved in? I don't know the whole story. I've been trying to figure it out for months. But Mom, you need to understand. Nicole isn't who I thought she was. She's not who any of us thought she was. Before he could explain further, we heard the front door open. Samuel? Why is there a suitcase in the hallway? Nicole's voice cut through the house like a blade. Samuel's face went white. She's not supposed to be back. Her business trip was probably a lie, I finished. Like everything else. We emerged from the office to find Nicole standing in the entrance hall, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She was beautiful in that calculated way some women manage. Every hair in place, makeup perfect, clothes expensive but understated. She looked at me, and I saw her mind working at lightning speed behind those cold eyes. "Marie?" she said with a smile that didn't reach those eyes. "What a surprise. Samuel, you didn't tell me your mother was visiting." "I didn't know," Samuel said, his voice stronger now. "She surprised us." "How lovely." Nicole set down her handbag with deliberate care. "Though I'm afraid we're not really prepared for guests right now. Perhaps Marie would be more comfortable at a hotel." "I'm perfectly comfortable here," I said, matching her smile with one of my own. "With my son and grandson. My grandson who's looking remarkably healthy." Something flickered across Nicole's face. Annoyance, calculation, threat. "Yes, we're so blessed. The treatment has been working miracles." "What treatment?" The words came out before I could stop them. "There are no medications in this house. No medical equipment. Timothy doesn't even know he was supposed to be sick." The temperature in the room dropped. Nicole's smile stayed fixed, but her eyes turned to ice. "Samuel, could you take Timothy upstairs? I think your mother and I need to have a conversation." "No." Samuel stepped beside me, and I felt a surge of pride. "Whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of me. I want to know the truth, Nicole. All of it." Nicole studied us both for a long moment. Then she laughed, a cold, calculated sound that raised the hair on the back of my neck. "The truth? You want the truth?" She walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street. "The truth is far more complicated than either of you could imagine. And, Marie, if you're smart, you'll get on the next plane back to Pennsylvania and forget you ever came here." "Is that a threat?" I kept my voice steady. "It's advice." She turned back to us. "From someone who's trying to protect you. Both of you." "Protect us from what?" Samuel demanded. Nicole's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression changed. Something like fear crossing her features for just a second before the mask returned. "From people who don't like questions," she said quietly. "People who I owe a great deal of money to. People who your mother's donations have been keeping at bay." The pieces began clicking into place with horrifying clarity. "You're in debt," I said, "to dangerous people. And you've been using money from me, money you made Samuel and me believe was going to save Timothy's life, to pay them off. It's more complicated than that." "Then explain it." Samuel's voice was shaking with barely controlled anger. "Explain why you've been stealing from my mother. Explain why you cloned my phone. Explain all of it, Nicole. Now." She looked at him with something almost like pity. "Samuel, you really don't want to know. And Marie, you should have stayed in Pennsylvania. Because now that you're here, now that you know something is wrong, they're going to know too." "Who's they?" I demanded. Nicole's phone buzzed again. She looked at it, and this time, genuine fear showed on her face. "The people I borrowed from. The people who don't accept no or I don't have it as answers." She looked up at us, and for the first time since I'd met her, I saw real emotion in her eyes. "The people who are watching this house right now." I moved to the window instinctively. Outside, in the growing darkness, a black car sat across the street. 2 figures inside, watching our house. "How much do you owe them?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. $400,000. "And your money bought me time, Marie, but not enough. Never enough." Nicole's mask was cracking now. "They want their money by the end of the month, or they start taking things that matter." "Like what?" Samuel asked, though I could see in his face that he already knew the answer. Nicole walked to the stairs and called up them. "Timothy, honey, come down here, please." My blood turned to ice. "No," I breathed. "You wouldn't." "I didn't have a choice," Nicole said. "I made a mistake 3 years ago, and I've been running ever since. I thought marrying Samuel, moving to Canada, creating a new life, I thought I could escape it. But they found me. They always find you. And when they threatened Timothy, when they said they'd take him as collateral, you decided to steal from me instead," I finished. "I decided to protect my son." Nicole's voice turned hard. "And I'll keep protecting him, no matter what I have to do. So here's what's going to happen. Marie, You're going to tell anyone who asks that Timothy was very sick, that your money saved his life, and that everything is fine now. Samuel, you're going to stop asking questions. And we're all going to pretend this conversation never happened. Timothy appeared at the top of the stairs, confused and scared by the tension in the air. Mom? Grandma? What's wrong? I looked at my grandson, then at my son, then at the woman who'd been systematically destroying my life to save her own, and I made a decision that surprised even me. Nothing's wrong, sweetheart, I called up to Timothy. Everything's going to be just fine. Because I'd spent a year being victimized, being manipulated, being lied to, but I was still standing, and I'd learned something important. I was much stronger and much smarter than anyone, including myself, had given me credit for. Nicole thought she held all the cards. She thought fear and threats would make me run home and hide. She had no idea who she was dealing with. That night, after Timothy was in bed and Samuel had retreated to the guest room in defeated silence, I sat in the dark living room with my laptop open and made a series of phone calls. One to my daughter Clara, who was a real estate agent, but also knew every lawyer and law enforcement officer in our county. One to my bank, requesting detailed transaction histories. One to a private investigator whose card I'd found in my husband's things years ago, and kept without knowing why. And one to a number I found in Nicole's address book when she thought I'd gone to bed. A number labeled simply M. When a man answered, I didn't identify myself. I simply said, I know about the 400,000. I know about Nicole, and I have a proposition for you. There was a long silence. Then, who is this? Someone who can get you your money, I said. Meet me tomorrow, alone. I hung up before he could respond, my heart hammering but my hands steady. Nicole thought I was just a confused old woman, easy to manipulate and easier to frighten. Tomorrow, she'd learn the truth. The question was, would Samuel stand with me or against me when everything came to light? And more importantly, what other secrets was Nicole hiding that could put us all in even greater danger? The coffee shop was deliberately public, a busy Tim Hortons near the financial district where witnesses abounded and violence would draw immediate attention. I arrived 20 minutes early, positioning myself at a corner table where I could watch the entrance. My hands shook slightly as I wrapped them around my coffee cup, but my mind was clear. At precisely 10 o'clock, a man walked in. Mid-40s, expensive suit, face that had seen too much sun or too much stress. His eyes scanned the room with professional efficiency before landing on me. Something in my posture, my deliberate calm, must have identified me. He sat down across from me without asking permission. You're Marie, not a question. And you're Marcus. I'd found his name in Nicole's hidden documents, the same Marcus from the letter I'd discovered in Samuel's drawer. The man she borrowed $400,000 from. His expression didn't change, but I saw a flicker of respect in his eyes. You've done your homework. I've been doing nothing but homework for the past 24 hours. I pulled a folder from my bag and slid it across the table. These are bank records showing every transfer I made to my son over the past year. $237,000 to be exact. Money that Nicole told me was going to my grandson's cancer treatment. Marcus opened the folder, scanning the documents with practiced eyes. Nicole told me the money was coming from her family's business. Nicole's family doesn't have a business. Her father drives a delivery truck in Buffalo. Her mother works retail. I'd learned this from 3 hours of internet research and 2 phone calls to people who knew people. Everything she's told you has been a lie, just like everything she told me. He closed the folder slowly. Why are you telling me this? Because I want to make you an offer. You want your money, and I want my son and grandson safe from whatever Nicole has gotten them involved in. I think we can help each other. I'm listening. First, I need to know what Nicole actually borrowed the money for. And don't tell me drugs or gambling. I've seen her type before. This is something else. Marcus leaned back, studying me with those cold, calculating eyes. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. Not a pleasant smile, but one of grudging admiration. You're sharper than she said you were. She claimed you were a confused old woman, easy to manipulate. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. Nicole borrowed the money to buy these. The image showed a collection of paintings, old, ornate, valuable looking. Art theft? I guessed. Art fraud. Nicole's involved with a ring that creates forgeries of famous paintings and sells them to private collectors. The $400,000 was her buy-in, her investment in the operation. She was supposed to turn it into $2 million within a year. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. But something went wrong. The FBI started investigating. 3 members of the ring got arrested. Nicole panicked and tried to disappear, which is when I informed her that disappearing with my money wasn't an option. He leaned forward. She promised she could get the money another way, said she had family resources. That's when the payments from you started arriving. And you didn't question where a woman with no family money was suddenly getting thousands of dollars a month? I don't question sources, Mrs. Marie. I only care about results, and for a while the results were adequate. But then last month the payments slowed. Nicole started making excuses. I don't accept excuses. So you threatened her child. I threatened to tell her husband everything unless she paid up by the end of November. The child was her interpretation. He paused. Though I admit, allowing her to believe I might take more direct action served my purposes. I felt cold rage building in my chest, but I kept my voice level. So you're not actually going to hurt Timothy. I'm a businessman, not a monster. But I will take legal action to recoup my investment, which means your son will likely lose everything. His house, his savings, possibly his career when the fraud connections come to light. Marcus straightened his tie. Unless you're about to offer me a solution, I'm going to get you your money, every penny. But it's going to take 3 months, maybe 4. I don't have 3 months. Then you don't have $400,000, I said flatly. Because Nicole doesn't have it, my son doesn't have it, and I certainly don't have it in liquid assets. But I do have property. A farm in Pennsylvania, fully paid off until I mortgaged it for this scheme. It's worth at least $600,000. Marcus's eyes sharpened with interest. Go on. I can sell it, but not overnight. These things take time. Appraisals, inspections, finding buyers. But if you give me 4 months, I'll get you your $400,000 plus an additional $50,000 for your patients. $450,000. He considered this. And what do you get out of this arrangement? Nicole out of my family's life. Permanently. I want her gone, Marcus. Divorced from my son, nowhere near my grandson. Vanished from our lives completely. And I want your word that once you're paid, this whole mess is over. No coming back for more, no revenge plots, no lingering threats. You're asking me to trust you. No, I'm asking you to recognize good business sense. You get more money than you're owed. I get my family back. Nicole gets exactly what she deserves. Nothing. Marcus drummed his fingers on the table, thinking. Finally, he nodded. 4 months. But I want updates every 2 weeks. And if you try to run, if you try to cheat me the way Nicole did, the consequences will be severe. Understood. Do we have a deal? He extended his hand. I shook it, feeling like I'd just made a bargain with something dark and dangerous, but I'd do worse to protect my family. One more thing, Marcus said as he stood to leave. Nicole isn't working alone. Her partner in the forgery ring. He's still out there, still operational. And he's going to be very unhappy when he learns Nicole's funding has dried up. Who is he? She never told me his name. Only that he's dangerous and that she's terrified of him. Marcus dropped a business card on the table. If things get complicated, call me. I protect my investments. After he left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, my mind racing. I'd just promised to sell my home, the house where I'd raised my children, where Frank and I had built our life together, the house I'd sworn I'd never leave. But what good was a house if my family was destroyed? I returned to Samuel's home around noon to find my son waiting in the kitchen, his face pale and determined. Mom, we need to talk. About everything. I agree. Where's Nicole? Gone. She took Timothy to her sister's place. She doesn't know I know the truth about her sister. That the woman isn't actually her sister. Just another person involved in whatever scheme this is. My heart sank. Samuel, honey? I know, Mom. I know about the art fraud. I know about the money she owes. I know about all of it. He pulled out a laptop and turned it toward me. Last night, after you went to bed, I did what I should have done months ago. I hacked her email. You what? I'm an accountant, Mom. I'm good with numbers and patterns and computers. Nicole always thought I was too trusting, too naive to question her. But I've been questioning for weeks, ever since I found out she'd been using my phone to contact you. He clicked through screens. Look at this. The emails painted a damning picture. Communications with someone named R about forgery techniques. Messages to Marcus about payment schedules. And worse, much worse, emails discussing how to handle the family problem. The family problem is us, Samuel said quietly. She's been planning to disappear, Mom. To take Timothy and run once she got enough money from you or found another source. These emails from last week. She's arranging false passports. Does she know you found this? Not yet. I covered my tracks. But Mom, there's something else. Something that changes everything. He pulled up another email, this one from just 3 days ago. Read this one. The email was from Nicole to R. The mother showed up unexpectedly. She knows about the fake treatment. Samuel is asking questions. We need to accelerate the timeline. Have you secured the buyer for the Vermeer? Vermeer? I breathed. Johannes Vermeer, the Dutch master? Nicole and her partner, this R person, they've created a forgery of a lost Vermeer painting. The buyer is willing to pay $10 million. She's planning to close the deal next week and disappear with the money. $10 million. My mind reeled. Samuel, that's enough to pay off Marcus. Enough to start a new life somewhere. Enough for her to vanish completely. Samuel's voice broke. With my son, she's going to take Timothy and I'll never see him again. I stood up, pacing the kitchen. We have to stop her. We have to... I stopped. Wait, where is this sale taking place? Samuel clicked to another email. The buyer is coming to Toronto, meeting at a private gallery downtown, next Tuesday night. That's 5 days from now. Mom, what are you thinking? I looked at my son, my brilliant, trusting, heartbroken son, and made another decision. We're going to beat her at her own game, but I'm going to need your help, Clara's help, and probably Marcus's help too. Marcus? The loan shark? He's not actually a loan shark. He's an investor in art fraud who got defrauded himself. And right now, he's the closest thing we have to an ally. I pulled out my phone. I promised him $450,000 in 4 months. But what if we could get him $10 million in 5 days? Samuel stared at me. You want to steal Nicole's sale. I want to make sure the forgery is revealed for what it is, Nicole is exposed, and the real authorities, not Marcus's brand of justice, handle this situation. But first, I need to know everything, every detail of this forgery operation, every person involved, every weakness in Nicole's plan. Why? Because your wife is about to learn that you don't steal from a mother protecting her family, and you definitely don't threaten to take her grandson. I felt something hard and cold settling in my chest. I've been playing the confused old woman for a year while she robbed me blind. Time for her to see who I really am. Samuel opened his mouth, closed it, then started typing. I have most of the emails downloaded. Give me an hour and I'll have everything organized. Good. I'm going to call Clara and see what kind of legal help she can line up. And Samuel? Yeah, Mom. When this is over, when Nicole is dealt with and Timothy is safe, we're going to have a long conversation about why you didn't tell me something was wrong months ago. He looked down at his hands. I was ashamed. I married her. I brought her into our family. This is my fault. No, sweetheart. This is Nicole's fault. She's a con artist and a fraud. She targeted you deliberately. I touched his shoulder. But we're going to fix this. Together. What I didn't tell him was that I'd already started fixing it. That morning, before meeting Marcus, I'd called a friend from Frank's Veterans Association, a retired FBI agent who specialized in art crimes. I'd sent him everything I'd found about Nicole's operation, and I'd asked him to start an investigation. By the time Nicole returned that evening with Timothy, she walked into a house that looked normal but was anything but. Samuel and I sat in the living room, playing cards with Timothy, looking like a happy family. Nicole watched us with suspicious eyes. Marie, I'm surprised you're still here. Why would I leave? I came to visit my family. I smiled pleasantly. Besides, Samuel and I have been having the most interesting conversations about art. Did you know he has quite an eye for forgeries? I saw the color drain from her face just for a moment before she recovered. Is that so? Oh, yes. We were looking at this article about a Vermeer forgery that sold for millions before being exposed. Fascinating stuff. The forger went to prison for 20 years. I kept my tone light, conversational. I imagine the buyer wasn't very happy either. These things can get quite ugly when the truth comes out. Nicole's hands clenched at her sides. I'm sure they can. Samuel, could you help me in the kitchen? I heard them arguing in harsh whispers. Heard Samuel's voice, stronger than I'd heard it in years, telling her he knew everything. Heard Nicole's panic, her threats, her desperate attempts to regain control. Heard my son tell his wife that it was over. Nicole stormed out of the kitchen, grabbed her coat, and left without another word. The door slammed behind her with finality. Samuel came back into the living room, shaking but resolute. She's going to run. No, I said quietly. She's going to try to accelerate her timeline. Move the sale up, try to close the deal early, get the money and disappear before we can stop her. How do you know? Because it's what I would do if I were her. I stood up, my old bones protesting but my spirit stronger than it had been in years. Timothy, sweetheart, why don't you go play in your room? Grandma and Daddy need to talk about grown-up things. After Timothy left, I turned to Samuel. Call Clara. Tell her we need her here tomorrow morning with whatever lawyer she trusts most. Then call this number. I handed him Marcus's card. And tell him the timeline just changed. The sale is happening sooner and we need to be ready. Mom, what exactly are we doing? We're setting a trap. And Nicole is going to walk right into it. What I didn't say was that I'd already set another trap. One that Nicole wouldn't see coming until it was too late. Because while she'd been stealing from me, using my phone number cloning investigation with the private investigator, I'd learned something interesting. Nicole's business trips over the past year hadn't been to business meetings at all. They'd been to prison, to visit someone whose release date was next week, someone named Robert Thorne, the R from the emails, Nicole's partner, and according to the prison records I'd uncovered, Timothy's biological father. Samuel didn't know. He thought Timothy was his son. The truth was going to destroy him, but he needed to know. We all needed to know everything before we could move forward. Tomorrow, I'd tell him. Tomorrow, we'd face all the ugly truths together. Tonight, I sat in the guest room and allowed myself one moment of weakness. One moment where I let the tears fall for everything we'd lost, and everything we'd have to sacrifice to get through this. Then I dried my eyes, opened my laptop, and continued planning. Nicole thought she was the smart one, the manipulator, the one in control. She was about to learn that the most dangerous person in any room is the one everyone underestimates. And she'd been underestimating me from the very beginning. I told Samuel the truth about Timothy at 6 o'clock the next morning, before Clara arrived, before the lawyer came, before anyone else could soften the blow or talk me out of it. We sat at his kitchen table with coffee growing cold between us, and I showed him the prison records, the birth certificate I'd found hidden in Nicole's closet during my midnight search, and the DNA test results Nicole had kept locked in a safe deposit box, a box I'd discovered the key to taped under her jewelry drawer. My son didn't cry. He didn't rage or break things or fall apart the way I'd feared. Instead, he sat perfectly still, staring at the documents like they were written in a foreign language he was trying desperately to decode. 7 years, he finally said. I've been his father for 7 years. You are his father, I said firmly. Biology doesn't change that. You've raised him, loved him, been there for every moment that mattered. Does he know? Does Timothy know? No. And Nicole clearly never planned to tell either of you. Robert Thorne went to prison for art fraud when she was pregnant. She needed a fresh start, a clean identity, someone stable who could provide cover for her past. I reached across the table to grip his hand. She used you, Samuel. She's been using you from the beginning. And now Thorne is getting out of prison. Samuel's voice was hollow. That's what this is really about, isn't it? The accelerated timeline. the desperate need for money. She's planning to run away with him. That's my theory, and she wants to take Timothy with her. Over my dead body. The words came out quiet but absolute. Samuel looked up at me, and I saw something I recognized, the same steel I'd found in myself when pushed too far. What do we do, Mom? Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Clara stood on the porch with a man in an expensive suit. Harold Morrison, she'd said his name was. One of the best family lawyers in Toronto, according to my daughter's frantic research. Mom, what on earth is going on? Clara hugged me tightly, then stepped back to examine me like I might be injured. You called me at midnight talking about fraud and forgery and dangerous criminals. I thought you were having some kind of episode. I'm having perfect clarity for the first time in a year, I said, ushering them inside. Mr. Morrison, thank you for coming on such short notice. Call me Harold. And Clara didn't give me much choice. She's very persuasive. He set his briefcase down, all business. Now, someone want to tell me what exactly we're dealing with here. We spent the next hour laying out everything. The fake illness, the stolen money, the art forgery ring, Nicole's deception, the upcoming sale. Harold took notes, asked sharp questions, and occasionally looked at me with something like admiration. Mrs. Marie, you've essentially conducted a private investigation that would put some professionals to shame, he said finally. But we have several serious problems. First, the money you sent to Nicole. Legally, that was a gift. Getting it back will be nearly impossible. I don't care about the money anymore, I said. I care about keeping Timothy safe and making sure Nicole faces consequences. Which brings me to problem 2, custody. Samuel's name is on Timothy's birth certificate as the father. Nicole will argue he has no biological claim. But I've raised him, Samuel protested. 7 years. I know. And we can fight that. But it's going to be ugly, expensive, and there are no guarantees. Harold pulled out more papers. Problem 3. If we go to the police now with what we know about the forgery ring, they'll investigate. But it could take months. Meanwhile, Nicole could disappear with Timothy before any charges are filed. So what do you suggest? Clara demanded. We need leverage. Something that forces Nicole to negotiate on your terms rather than ours, hoping the legal system works in our favor. Harold looked at me. Marie, you mentioned meeting with the man she owes money to. Marcus. Tell me more about that conversation. I explained the deal I'd made, watching Harold's expression shift from alarm to calculation. That's actually brilliant, he said finally. Unorthodox and slightly terrifying, but brilliant. If we can prove Nicole defrauded both you and Marcus, if we can show a pattern of criminal behavior with multiple victims, we have a much stronger case. Plus, Marcus's testimony could be invaluable. There's just one problem, Samuel said quietly. The sale is happening tomorrow night now. Nicole moved it up. I got an email from her an hour ago. She wants to meet, wants to talk things through. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap. I stood up, pacing. She's going to try to manipulate you, make promises, do whatever it takes to buy herself time to complete the sale and disappear. Clara's phone buzzed. She looked at it and went pale. Mom, you need to see this. She turned her phone toward me. It was a text message from an unknown number, but the photo attached made my blood run cold. It was me, sitting in the Tim Hortons yesterday, clearly meeting with Marcus. The message read, "Tell your mother to back off, or everyone will know what she's been doing. Meeting with loan sharks? Conspiracy? At her age, she'll spend her final years in prison. Is that what she wants?" Nicole's having me followed, I said, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. She knows I met with Marcus. This is a threat, Harold said, studying the message. And it changes things. Nicole's desperate enough to try intimidating you through legal threats. She might actually follow through. Let her try. I sat back down, thinking fast. Harold, if Nicole tries to claim I was conspiring with Marcus to commit fraud, what would she have to prove? Intent, knowledge of criminal activity, active participation in planning. Without evidence of those things, it's just her word against yours. He paused. But Marie, if she's smart enough, she could manufacture that evidence. How? Fake emails? Doctored recordings, false witnesses. I've seen it before. And given her expertise in forgery, creating false documentation would be child's play. The room fell silent as we all absorbed this. So we're running out of time, Samuel said. Nicole makes her sale tomorrow night, gets her money, and disappears with Timothy before we can stop her. Or we act now, and she destroys Mom's reputation, and possibly gets her arrested on fabricated charges. There's a third option, I said slowly. We let her think she's winning. Everyone turned to look at me. What do you mean? Clara asked. Nicole expects me to back off now that she's threatened me. She thinks I'm a frightened old woman who'll retreat to Pennsylvania and let her do whatever she wants. I felt that cold certainty settling over me again. So that's exactly what I'll do. I'll call her, tell her I'm going home, tell her she wins. But you won't actually leave, Samuel said, understanding dawning. I won't actually leave. I'll go to the airport, make a show of checking in, even send her a photo of my boarding pass. But I won't get on the plane. I looked at Harold. Meanwhile, we need someone at that art sale tomorrow night. Someone Nicole won't recognize. Someone who can verify the forgery, identify the buyers, and provide testimony later. I can't go. She knows me, Clara said. And I definitely can't go, Samuel added. I have a colleague, Harold said thoughtfully. Art fraud isn't my specialty, but I worked with someone last year on an estate case involving disputed paintings. He's a consultant for insurance companies, verifies authenticity. If anyone can spot a forgery, it's him. Perfect. Can you get him there tomorrow night? I can try. But Marie, if Nicole discovers any of this, she won't, because I'm going to give her exactly what she expects. I pulled out my phone. Samuel, I need you to take Timothy somewhere safe. Does Nicole's mother still live in Buffalo? Yes, but call her. Tell her it's an emergency. Get Timothy there today before Nicole can stop you. Tell Nicole he has a school trip or that he's sick. Whatever keeps her from panicking until after the sale. She'll never believe he's on a school trip when she just pulled him out yesterday, Samuel protested. Then tell her the truth, that you're taking him to see his grandmother because you need family support during this crisis. Appeal to her sense of control. Let her think you're broken and making emotional decisions. Samuel hesitated, then nodded. Okay, I can do that. Clara, I need you back in Pennsylvania. Go to my house, make it look like I'm there. Post on social media. You know how to do that thing with the photos that show locations? Geotags, Mom. Yes. Good. Make it look like I'm home, defeated, hiding. Let Nicole think she scared me off. What will you actually be doing? Harold asked. I'm going to be watching Nicole, every move she makes. And when she meets with her buyer tomorrow night, when she thinks she's finally won, I'm going to make sure the right people know exactly what's happening. Clara grabbed my arm. Mom, this is dangerous. These are criminals. What if something goes wrong? Then it goes wrong, but I'm not letting that woman take my grandson. I covered her hand with mine. Clara, Samuel, I know you're both scared. I'm scared too. But I'm also done being a victim. Nicole has spent a year treating me like I'm stupid, like I'm weak, like I don't matter. Tomorrow night she's going to learn different. We spent the rest of the day planning. Samuel packed Timothy's things with shaking hands, telling his son they were going on an adventure to see his other grandmother. Timothy, bless him, was thrilled. He loved road trips. Nicole called Samuel 3 times, each time more suspicious. I listened on speaker as he played his part perfectly. The broken husband, the confused father, the man who just needed space to think. She bought it, probably because she wanted to believe she still had control over him. By evening, Samuel and Timothy were gone. Clara had headed back to Pennsylvania. Harold had confirmed his colleague would be at the gallery tomorrow night. And I was alone in Samuel's house, waiting. Nicole came home at 8. I heard her car in the driveway, heard the front door open, heard her call out for Samuel. When she found me in the kitchen instead, her surprise quickly turned to cold calculation. Where's my family, Marie? Samuel took Timothy to Buffalo to stay with Nicole's mother. He needed time to process everything. You had no right. I had every right. I'm his grandmother. And Samuel is his father, no matter what your paperwork says. I stood up slowly, letting her see the exhaustion I actually felt. Nicole, I'm going home. You win. I can't fight you, I can't afford the legal battles, and I can't risk Samuel and Timothy getting hurt in the crossfire. She studied me carefully. Just like that? You're giving up? I'm 63 years old. I'm tired. And I'm scared. All of that was true, which made it easy to sell. You threatened to have me arrested. You have photos of me meeting with Marcus. I don't know what you're capable of anymore. I saw her relax slightly, saw her believe she'd won. Smart choice. When are you leaving? Tomorrow morning. Early flight. I picked up my purse. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. I can't be in this house anymore. It's all too much. That's probably for the best. Nicole walked me to the door, actually had the audacity to put a hand on my shoulder. Marie, I want you to know, I never wanted things to get this ugly. You forced my hand. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw exactly what she was. A predator, a manipulator, someone who'd never felt genuine remorse in her life. Goodbye, Nicole. I walked to my rental car, drove away, and didn't look back. I checked into the hotel I'd mentioned, made sure to use my credit card so there'd be a record. Then I waited exactly 2 hours before checking out through a side entrance and taking an Uber to a different hotel under a false name, something Harold had helped me arrange. From my new room, I made a series of calls. To Marcus, confirming the sale location and time. To Harold, reviewing the final plan. To Clara, making sure she was posting those photos from my house. And then I called a number I'd been given by my friend from the Veterans Association. Agent Walsh? This is Marie. I have information about an art fraud operation happening tomorrow night in Toronto, and I'd like to discuss immunity in exchange for my cooperation. The FBI agent on the other end of the line listened to my story with growing interest. When I finished, he said, Mrs. Carson, what you're describing, if true, this is bigger than just a forgery ring. The buyer you mentioned, the one paying $10 million? We've been tracking him for years. He's connected to international money laundering. If we can catch him in the act... So, you'll be there? We'll be there. But Mrs. Carson, I need you to understand. You're putting yourself in considerable danger. If anything goes wrong tomorrow night, if Nicole suspects, I know the risks. I'm doing it anyway. After I hung up, I sat in the dark hotel room and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. Fear, anger, grief for the trust that had been shattered, the money that had been stolen, the year I'd lost to Nicole's lies. But underneath all of that was something else, something hard and unbreakable. Purpose. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I know you're still in Toronto. Last chance to leave before you regret it. Nicole. Still trying to scare me. I texted back, You're right. I'm at the airport now. Boarding soon. You win. Then I turned off my phone, opened my laptop, and spent the next few hours going over every detail of tomorrow's plan. Because Nicole was about to discover that winning and actually getting away with it were two very different things. And that the grandmother she'd dismissed as a confused old fool was the last person she should have underestimated. Tomorrow night, everything would come to a head. The forgery sale, the FBI operation, the custody battle, the truth about Timothy's parentage, all of it converging in one moment that would determine all our futures. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt calm, ready. Let Nicole think she'd won. Tomorrow, she'd learn the real price of her deception, and I'd make sure she paid every penny of it. The Thornhill Gallery was elegant in that deliberately understated way that screamed money. Polished marble floors, subtle lighting, art that probably cost more than most people's homes. I watched from across the street, hidden in the shadows of a coffee shop that had closed an hour ago, as luxury cars pulled up and deposited their wealthy occupants. Nicole arrived at 7:30 in a pink dress that probably cost what I used to spend on groceries for a month. She looked confident, composed, every inch the successful art dealer she was pretending to be. No sign of the panic I'd heard in her voice when Samuel took Timothy to Buffalo to stay with Nicole's mother. No hint of the desperation that had driven her to threaten an old woman. She was good. I'd give her that. Agent Walsh's voice crackled in the tiny earpiece Harold's colleague had given me. Target has entered the building. We have visual confirmation. Mrs. Carson, remember, you don't engage. You observe only. Understood, I murmured, though we both knew I was lying. Because 20 minutes after Nicole entered, another car pulled up. This one was armored, expensive in a way that made the other vehicles look cheap. 2 bodyguards emerged first, scanning the street with professional paranoia. Then the buyer stepped out. Even from across the street, I could see why the FBI had been tracking him. Dmitry Volkov moved like a man who'd never been told no in his life, like the world bent to accommodate him rather than the other way around. Russian oligarch, money launderer, collector of stolen art, and human misery in equal measure. And Nicole was about to sell him a forged Vermeer for $10 million. Volkov is entering, Walsh said. All units stand by. I waited exactly 5 minutes before crossing the street. The gallery door was locked, but I'd planned for that. Harold's colleague, Dr. James Reeves, had given me a visitor badge that would get me past the first security checkpoint. What happened after that was improvisation. The security guard barely glanced at my badge before waving me through. Second floor, ma'am. Take the elevator. My heart hammered as I rode up, each floor feeling like a small eternity. The doors opened onto a corridor lined with paintings worth more than I could calculate. At the far end, I could hear voices. Nicole's smooth pitch, Volkov's accented responses. I crept closer, staying in the shadows. Through the partially open door, I could see them. Nicole stood beside an easel holding a painting. Girl by the lattice window, supposedly a lost Vermeer that had vanished in 1945. Even to my untrained eye, it was breathtaking. The kind of art that made you believe in beauty despite everything ugly in the world. It was also completely fake. The provenance is impeccable, Nicole was saying, her voice confident and warm. Documentation traces it back to a private collection in Amsterdam, hidden during the war, passed down through family lines. My associate acquired it from the estate of a woman whose grandfather saved it from the Nazis. Volkov circled the painting like a predator evaluating prey. Your associate. The one who's been in prison for the last 7 years. Nicole's smile didn't falter. Robert Thorne is an expert in his field. His legal troubles were unrelated to his authentication work. His legal troubles were art fraud. Volkov stopped circling. Which makes me wonder, how do I know this isn't another of his famous forgeries? Because I'm staking my reputation on its authenticity. And because Dr. James Reeves has authenticated it. Nicole gestured to where Harold's colleague stood, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. Dr. Reeves is one of the most respected art historians in North America. Reeves cleared his throat. The pigments are consistent with 17th century Dutch masters. The canvas aging is authentic. The brushwork matches Vermeer's known techniques, though further testing would be required for confirmation. What he didn't say, what I knew he wouldn't say until the right moment, was that a truly expert forgery could replicate all of those things. That Robert Thorne was exactly that skilled. That this painting was brilliant and beautiful and worth maybe $10,000. Not $10 million. I'll need more assurances, Volkov said coldly. Of course, which is why payment won't be transferred until your own experts have examined it. Nicole's voice remained smooth, but I caught the tension underneath. She needed this sale to happen tonight. But I do require a deposit to hold the piece. $2 million. Non-refundable if your experts confirm authenticity. $2 million. Enough to pay off Marcus with money left over to run. Enough to disappear before anyone could stop her. Volkov considered this. And if my experts determine it's a forgery, then you get your deposit back, and I face the consequences of fraud. But it won't come to that. This painting is genuine. The lie came so easily to her, so naturally. I wondered how many lies she'd told Samuel over the years, how many times she'd looked my grandson in the eye and spun stories about a future she never intended to share with him. I stepped into the room. It's remarkable, isn't it? I said conversationally. How easily some people lie. Nicole spun around. her face cycling through shock, rage, and calculation in the span of a heartbeat. "Marie, what are you doing here?" "Learning about art." I walked closer to the painting, studying it with genuine appreciation. "This really is beautiful work. Whoever forged it has extraordinary talent." "Security!" Nicole's voice was sharp. "Won't be coming." I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen, a text from Agent Walsh reading "Building secured." "The FBI has the gallery surrounded, Nicole, along with Canadian authorities. This sale isn't happening." Volkov's bodyguards moved forward, but suddenly Agent Walsh and 3 other agents materialized from side rooms, weapons drawn. "Nobody moves," Walsh commanded. "Mr. Volkov, you're under arrest for money laundering and attempted purchase of stolen art. Nicole Carson, you're under arrest for fraud and—" "Wait." I held up a hand, surprising everyone, including Walsh. "Before you arrest her, I think we all deserve some answers. Don't you, Nicole? Don't you think you owe us the truth after everything you've done?" Nicole's mask was cracking now, fear bleeding through. "Marie, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You targeted my son because you needed a respectable cover. You invented a sick grandson to steal my life savings. You've been planning to abandon Samuel and take Timothy to start a new life with Robert Thorne." I stepped closer to her. "What I don't understand is why. Why go to all this effort? Why destroy so many lives?" "Because I didn't have a choice." The words burst out of her, raw and desperate. "You don't know what it's like to owe people like Volkov, to know that if you don't pay, they'll take everything from you, your freedom, your future, your child. So you took mine instead. You have plenty." Nicole's composure shattered completely. "You have your farm, your security, your retirement. You've lived your life. I'm 34 years old, Marie. I made one mistake 7 years ago, and it's been chasing me ever since. Robert and I needed capital to get out from under these people, and you were an easy mark, a lonely widow with money and a desperate need to feel useful." The words should have hurt. Probably she intended them to. But I'd been preparing for this moment for days, and her cruelty just strengthened my resolve. "You're right about one thing," I said quietly. "I was desperate to feel useful, to matter to someone. And you exploited that beautifully. But you made one critical mistake, Nicole." "What's that?" "You assumed that being kind meant being weak, that being trusting meant being stupid." I pulled out a folder from my bag, the same folder I'd shown Marcus, now considerably thicker. "For the past week, I've been documenting everything. Your emails to Robert Thorne, your communications with Volkov, the offshore accounts where you've been hiding money, the fake identity you created for Timothy so you could take him out of the country." Nicole's face went white. "How did you—" "I learned from you, actually. You taught me that trust is a weapon, that people will underestimate you if you let them, that sometimes the best way to win is to let everyone think you're losing." I handed the folder to Agent Walsh. "I believe you'll find everything you need for a comprehensive case against both of them." Walsh flipped through the documents, his expression growing more impressed with each page. "Mrs. Carson, this is extraordinary work. Thank you, though I can't take all the credit. Samuel helped with the digital forensics. Turns out my son is quite skilled at that sort of thing." "Samuel helped you?" Nicole's voice was barely a whisper. "Of course he did. He's been working with me from the beginning. Well, from the moment I showed him who you really were." I felt a fierce pride saying it. "You thought you'd broken him, made him dependent and controllable. But he's stronger than you ever gave him credit for. And when it came down to choosing between you and his son, he chose Timothy. Every time. You can't prove any of this in court. Half these documents were obtained illegally." "Actually," Harold Morrison said, stepping into the room with impeccable timing, "everything was obtained with proper legal authorization. Mrs. Carson came to the FBI with evidence of an ongoing crime. They issued warrants for electronic surveillance. Everything here is admissible." Nicole looked around the room, finally understanding that she'd lost, that every exit was blocked, every option exhausted, every lie exposed. "Where's Timothy?" she asked finally, her voice small. "Safe, with people who actually love him, people who won't use him as a pawn in their criminal schemes." I watched her face crumple and felt no satisfaction, only a deep, weary sadness. Nicole, you could have had everything. A good man who loved you, a beautiful child, a family. But you threw it all away for money and a fantasy of escaping consequences. Robert loves me. He's waiting for me right now. Robert Thorne was arrested 3 hours ago at his halfway house, Agent Walsh interrupted. He's currently being questioned about the forgery ring you've both been operating for the past decade. He's already started negotiating a plea deal. The look on Nicole's face told me everything. Robert was giving her up. The partner she'd sacrificed everything for was saving himself without a second thought. Figures, she said bitterly. Then, looking at me, I suppose you're proud of yourself. The clever grandmother who outsmarted everyone. No, I said honestly. I'm tired and sad and angry that any of this was necessary. But I'm also determined that you will face consequences for what you've done. Not just to me, but to Samuel and Timothy. To every person you've defrauded over the years. Volkov, who'd been watching this exchange with cold amusement, finally spoke. The old woman is smarter than you, Nicole. She played a better game. Take them away, Walsh ordered. As the agents led Nicole and Volkov toward the elevators, Nicole looked back at me one last time. You've destroyed my life. No, I said. You destroyed your own life. I just made sure you couldn't destroy anyone else's in the process. After they were gone, the room felt suddenly quiet. Dr. Reeves was carefully documenting the forged Vermeer. Harold was speaking with Canadian authorities about custody arrangements. Agent Walsh approached me with something like respect in his eyes. Mrs. Carson, I've been doing this job for 20 years. I've worked with professional informants, undercover agents, trained investigators. What you did, building this case essentially alone, that's remarkable. I had help and motivation. I looked at the painting one last time. Agent Walsh, what happens to it? The forgery? Evidence. Eventually, after the trials, probably destroyed. That seems wasteful. It really is beautiful, even if it's not real. Beauty based on deception is still deception, he said, but not unkindly. Maybe. Or maybe beauty was beauty, regardless of its origin. But that was a philosophical question for another day. Harold drove me back to Samuel's house around midnight. We rode in silence for a while before he said, You know, when Clara first called me about this case, I thought it was going to be a simple family dispute. Nothing about this was simple. Is anything ever simple when it comes to family? Fair point. He pulled into the driveway. Samuel and Timothy should be back tomorrow morning. Are you ready for that conversation? About Timothy's parentage? No. But it needs to happen anyway. For what it's worth, I think you handled this entire situation with remarkable grace and intelligence. Your husband would have been proud. The words made my eyes sting with unexpected tears. Thank you, Harold, for everything. Inside the empty house, I finally allowed myself to break down. I sat on the couch where I'd played cards with Timothy just days ago, and I cried for everything we'd lost and everything we'd have to rebuild. But underneath the grief was something else. Something I hadn't felt in the year since this nightmare began. Hope. Nicole was in custody. The forgery ring was exposed. My money was gone, but my family was safe. And tomorrow, Samuel and I would begin the hard work of healing, of rebuilding trust, of figuring out how to tell Timothy the truth about his parentage in a way that wouldn't break him. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing about the coming months would be easy. But we'd face it together, as a family. Stronger for having survived Nicole's deception. My phone buzzed with a text from Samuel. Saw the news. Mom, I don't know how to thank you. I typed back, come home tomorrow. Bring Timothy. We'll figure out the rest together. Then I went upstairs to the guest room, laid down on the bed, and slept more peacefully than I had in a year, because the worst was over. The confrontation was done, and tomorrow we'd begin again. Samuel and Timothy arrived at noon the next day. I watched from the kitchen window as my son lifted my grandson out of the car, both of them tired but whole, safe in ways that went beyond just physical safety. When Timothy saw me through the window, his face lit up with uncomplicated joy. Grandma! He ran to me, and I caught him in my arms, holding him close enough to feel his heartbeat. Real. Alive. Mine to protect, even if the biology said otherwise. Did you have fun with your other grandma? I asked, smoothing his hair. She makes the best pancakes. But I missed you. He pulled back to look at me seriously. Dad said Mom had to go away for a while. Is she coming back? Over his head, I met Samuel's eyes. We'd agreed on the drive that morning. Tell Timothy the truth, but tell it gently, in pieces he could understand. Your mom made some mistakes, Samuel said, kneeling beside us. Grown-up mistakes that she needs to fix. She's going to be away for a long time. Is she in trouble? Yes, buddy, she is. Timothy processed this with the straightforward logic of a 7-year-old. Did she do something bad? She hurt people. She lied. And now she has to face consequences for those choices. Samuel's voice was steady, but I could see the cost of that steadiness. But Timothy, I need you to know something really important. None of this is your fault. Sometimes adults make bad choices, and kids get caught in the middle. That's not fair, and I'm sorry. Are you in trouble too? No. Grandma and I, we stopped your mom from hurting more people. We did the right thing, even though it was hard. Timothy thought about this, then looked at me. You're like a superhero, Grandma. The words made me smile despite everything. Not a superhero, sweetheart. Just a grandmother who loves you very much. After Timothy went to play in the backyard, Samuel and I sat at the kitchen table with coffee and the weight of everything unsaid between us. Harold called this morning, Samuel began. The custody situation is complicated. Nicole's being held without bail, but her lawyer is arguing that my lack of biological connection to Timothy means I have no parental rights. My hands tightened around my cup. That's ridiculous. You've raised him since birth. I know. Harold says we have a strong case for maintaining custody based on established parental relationship, but it could take months to resolve. And Mom? His voice cracked. What do I tell Timothy? About Robert Thorne? About who his real father is? The truth. When he's old enough to understand it. But Samuel, listen to me. Biology doesn't make someone a father. You've been there for every scraped knee, every nightmare, every moment that mattered. That's what makes you his father. Nicole kept this from me for 7 years. She let me believe... He stopped, struggling for control. How did I not see it? How did I not know she was lying about everything? Because you're a good person who trusted the woman you married. That's not a character flaw, Samuel. That's being human. I reached across the table to grip his hand. But we need to talk about something else. Something I should have addressed months ago. He looked up, wary. Why didn't you tell me something was wrong? When did you first suspect Nicole was lying? Samuel was quiet for a long moment. 6 months ago. Maybe longer. I'd come home from work and find her on the phone, speaking in a language I didn't recognize. She'd close her laptop quickly when I entered the room. Timothy mentioned seeing people at the house who weren't there when I got home. He ran a hand through his hair. But every time I asked, she had an explanation. And I wanted to believe her because the alternative, that my wife was a stranger, was too frightening. Why didn't you call me? Because I was ashamed. I'd moved to Canada for her family's business, a business that turned out to be mostly fictional. I'd isolated myself from you and Clara because Nicole said your interference was stressing her out. By the time I realized how deep the lies went, I felt like I'd dug such a hole that I couldn't ask for help climbing out. His eyes met mine, full of regret. And because Nicole made me doubt myself, she'd tell me I was being paranoid, that stress was making me see problems that weren't there. After a while, I started believing her. That's called gaslighting. It's a manipulation tactic. I know that now. But in the moment, when someone you love keeps telling you that you're wrong, that you're the problem, it's hard to trust your own judgment. I understood that better than he knew. Nicole had done the same to me, making me doubt my instincts, my observations, my right to ask questions. Samuel, we both learned something important from this. When something feels wrong, it probably is. And family, real family, doesn't make you feel crazy for asking questions. I'm so sorry, Mom. For everything. For the money you lost. For not protecting you from Nicole. For... Stop. I squeezed his hand. You were a victim, too. Nicole targeted both of us. The money is gone. And yes, that hurts. I'll probably lose the farm. But we're alive. We're together. And we're free of her. That's worth more than any amount of money. We sat in silence for a while, watching Timothy play through the window. Then Samuel asked the question I'd been dreading. What happens now? To you, I mean. If you lose the farm, I'll figure it out. Maybe I'll move here, closer to you and Timothy. Maybe Clara has room for her elderly mother. I tried to make it sound light, but we both heard the fear underneath. Or, Samuel said slowly, you could stay here. This house is big enough. Timothy would love having you around. And honestly, Mom, I could use the help. Being a single parent, dealing with the custody battle, rebuilding my life. I can't do it alone. Samuel, I couldn't impose. It's not imposing. It's family. It's what we should have been doing all along instead of letting Nicole isolate us from each other. He looked at me with an intensity that reminded me of his father. I need you, Mom. We both need you. Please stay. The offer settled over me like a warm blanket. Stay. Build a new life here. Be part of Timothy's daily existence instead of just a visiting grandmother. Help Samuel heal. Create something good from the ashes of Nicole's deception. Let me think about it, I said, though we both knew I'd already decided. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Agent Walsh and Harold Morrison standing on the porch, both looking tired but satisfied. Mrs. Carson, Samuel, may we come in? We settled in the living room while Timothy remained safely occupied in the backyard. Nicole has agreed to a plea bargain, Harold began. She'll plead guilty to fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. In exchange for testimony against Robert Thorne and the broader forgery ring, she'll serve 8 years with possibility of parole after 5. 8 years, Samuel repeated numbly. It's a fair sentence given the scope of her crimes, Walsh added. Thorne is looking at 15 to 20. Volkov won't see freedom for the rest of his life. And the custody situation? I asked. Harold's expression brightened slightly. As part of her plea, Nicole has agreed to terminate her parental rights. Samuel will have full legal custody of Timothy. She can request supervised visitation after her release, but that's Samuel's decision. The relief on my son's face was almost painful to witness. So it's really over? The criminal case is over. You'll both need to testify at trial, but that's a formality at this point. Walsh looked at me. Mrs. Carson, there's one more thing. The assets we've seized from Nicole's accounts, approximately $430,000, that will be divided among her victims as restitution. How much of that was my money? I asked. We're still tracing the transfers, but preliminary analysis suggests you're entitled to approximately $200,000 in restitution. $200,000. Not the full amount I'd lost, but enough to save the farm, enough to keep my home, enough to give me choices about my future instead of having them dictated by financial desperation. There's also the matter of Marcus Romano, Walsh continued. He's agreed to forgive the debt Nicole owed him in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Apparently, you made quite an impression on him, Mrs. Carson. I just spoke his language, I said. Business instead of emotion. Well, your business sense potentially saved his life. We've learned that Volkov had ordered Romano's death for introducing Nicole to him. By cooperating with us, Romano entered witness protection. Walsh stood. In any case, you should receive your restitution within 60 days. Until then, if either of you need anything, don't hesitate to call. After they left, Samuel and I sat in stunned silence. $200,000, he finally said. Mom, that's a fraction of what I lost, but enough to survive on. I looked around the house, imagining a different future than the one I'd planned. Samuel, I think I'd like to take you up on that offer. To stay here for a while. Help with Timothy. Are you sure? What about the farm? The farm was my life with your father, and I'll always love it. But maybe it's time to build a new life, one that doesn't revolve around the past. I smiled. Besides, Timothy needs his grandmother, and apparently his grandmother needs him just as much. The weeks that followed were difficult in ways I hadn't anticipated. Timothy struggled with nightmares about his mother. Samuel battled guilt and anger in alternating waves. I dealt with my own trauma, the violation of trust, the year of deception, the reality that someone had targeted me specifically for my vulnerability. We all started therapy. Individual sessions and family sessions, working through the damage Nicole had inflicted on each of us. Slowly, painfully, we began to heal. Clara visited twice, bringing news from home and helping me make arrangements to rent out the farm instead of selling it. "You might want to come back someday," she said. "Keep your options open." I appreciated her optimism, but I knew the truth. I was building something new here. Not running from the past, but choosing a different future. 3 months after Nicole's arrest, I sat in Samuel's backyard, my backyard now, watching Timothy play soccer with neighborhood kids. He was laughing, running, completely healthy in body, and increasingly healthy in spirit. The nightmares were less frequent. The questions about his mother were becoming easier to answer with honesty and compassion. Samuel came out with 2 glasses of lemonade and sat beside me. "I got the final custody papers today," he said quietly. "It's official. Timothy is legally my son. No qualifications, no caveats." "That's wonderful, honey." The judge said something interesting. She said that families aren't just made by biology, they're made by choice, by commitment, by showing up every day even when it's hard. He looked at me. "She said you demonstrated that more powerfully than almost anyone who'd come through her courtroom." "She said that?" "Harold told me. Apparently you've become a bit of a legend in family law circles. The grandmother who took down an international art fraud ring to protect her family." I laughed. "That's a rather dramatic interpretation." "Is it, though?" Samuel's tone was serious now. "Mom, you could have walked away. When Nicole threatened you, when things got dangerous, when it became clear how deep this went, you could have protected yourself and let the authorities handle it. But you didn't. You stayed, you fought, and you won. Not through violence or luck, but through sheer intelligence and determination. And stubbornness," I added. "Don't forget stubbornness. I prefer to call it persistence." He raised his glass. "To you, Mom, the most formidable person I know." We clinked glasses, and I let myself feel the truth of what he was saying. A year ago, I'd been a lonely widow, marking time, feeling increasingly irrelevant in a world that seemed to have moved on without me. Nicole had seen that loneliness and exploited it ruthlessly, but in fighting back, in refusing to be a victim, I'd discovered something important. Age hadn't made me weak. It had made me wiser, more patient, more strategic. I'd survived 6 decades of life, including losing my husband, raising children, managing a farm through economic hardships. Those experiences hadn't diminished me. They'd forged me into someone capable of facing down criminals and winning. "Grandma, watch this," Timothy called from the yard. I watched him attempt an ambitious soccer trick that ended with him tumbling to the grass, laughing. Samuel and I both jumped up to check on him, but he was already bouncing back to his feet, resilient in the way only children can be. "Did you see? I almost had it." "Almost counts," I assured him. "Keep practicing." As evening fell and we moved inside for dinner, a simple meal we'd prepared together, I looked around the table at my family. Smaller than it had been, scarred by betrayal, but stronger for having survived it. Samuel caught my eye and smiled. "What are you thinking about?" "About how Nicole tried to make me feel invisible, irrelevant, easy to manipulate. How she saw a lonely old woman and thought she'd found a perfect victim. She was wrong on all counts," Samuel said. "She was. But you know what? I'm grateful to her, in a strange way." "Grateful?" "She taught me that I'm stronger than I thought. That age is an advantage, not a liability. That being underestimated is sometimes the best weapon you can have." I looked at Timothy, who was telling us an elaborate story about his soccer practice. "She tried to take everything from us. Instead, she gave us a chance to rebuild something better." Later, after Timothy was in bed and Samuel had gone to his room, I stood in the kitchen washing dishes and looking out at the Toronto skyline. Somewhere in that city, Nicole sat in a cell, facing the consequences of her choices. Part of me felt pity for her, for the waste of potential, for the life she'd destroyed through greed and desperation. But mostly, I felt free. Free from the fear that had haunted me for a year. Free from the doubt that I mattered, that I could protect the people I loved. Free from the belief that my best years were behind me. At 63, I'd taken down an international criminal operation. I'd protected my family. I'd proven that intelligence and experience could triumph over youth and ruthlessness. The farmhouse in Pennsylvania would be there if I ever wanted to return. But this house, this city, this life with Samuel and Timothy, this was my future now. Not the one I'd planned, but perhaps the one I needed. My phone buzzed with a text from Clara. "Proud of you, Mom. Always have been, but especially now." I smiled and typed back, "Proud of myself too. Who knew being a grandmother could be such an adventure?" Her response came quickly. "You're not just a grandmother, you're a warrior. Don't ever forget that." I wouldn't. Nicole had tried to make me forget my worth, my strength, my right to take up space in the world. She'd failed spectacularly, and in failing, she'd reminded me of a truth I'd been in danger of forgetting, that the most dangerous opponent isn't always the youngest, the strongest, or the most aggressive. Sometimes, it's the quiet one in the corner, the one everyone underestimates, the grandmother who's spent a lifetime learning how to survive, how to strategize, and how to protect the people she loves at any cost. I dried the last dish and placed it in the cabinet, then turned off the kitchen light. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, helping Timothy with homework, supporting Samuel through ongoing therapy, managing the financial complexities of restitution and rebuilding. But tonight, I allowed myself simply to rest in the satisfaction of a battle won, not through force, not through luck, but through wisdom, patience, and the kind of strength that only comes from living fully and refusing to give up. The kind of strength that age provides. The kind of strength that had saved my family. And as I climbed the stairs to bed, I carried that strength with me, a quiet victory that needed no grand declarations, no public celebration, just the knowledge that I had faced the worst and emerged whole, just the peace of knowing that my grandson slept safely in his room, just the hope of building something beautiful from the ruins Nicole had tried to create. And that, I thought as I drifted off to sleep, was worth more than any amount of money she'd stolen. That was everything. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.